everybody, and welcome to Film Freaks TV, films that we love. And I am here. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody. I'm here with my co-host.
Holy Presenza, otherwise known as the Moo Cow Moo.
All right, and right below us is.
Uh, John Ward, the odd
I,
man out.
I think it's all separate. Like we all have separate like things here in the box. So I say right below us because you're right below us in this box, these boxes. But maybe to Paul, you're like next to him or something. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm up in the corner.
Yeah. So I think, yeah.
So I
So
got
Paul
Paul
is up
below
in the
me.
corner, right? Probably in his, right. You're in the corner for your viewing. I know.
Yeah,
Nobody puts
Jonathan.
baby in the corner.
Well, that's
How
actually
can I?
funny that you said that because there'd be something interesting I'm going to tell you guys in the background. Um,
So
but
that's Jonathan and that's Paul to me.
okay.
Well,
All
I
right.
know Patrick Swayze was supposed to play in this role, so
There's I have a lot of background on this. And a lot of information. So before we begin, I want to explain a little bit about for those who don't know, first of all, we're doing Boondock Saints, the movie, is the film that we're talking about here. And it is by far I love this movie to death. Like this is just a fun fucking movie. Paul, I think you like it. I don't know if you love it, but I think you like it. You
right. It's a mixed bag for me. There's stuff that I really like about it. There's stuff that drives me crazy.
Okay. And then we've got a person who hated this movie, and he's going to explain to us a little bit about that.
I well I'll go back a little bit. So I lived in LA at the time that all of this was going on, and of course the internet was not the internet of today, but you still heard stuff about Troy Duffy, you heard stuff about this movie, you
Oh
heard
yeah.
stuff about Harvey Weinstein, wanting to produce it. You heard about all this type of stuff, and information didn't come as quickly, but I had absolutely no desire in seeing this assholes movie. And so I never saw it. I never went to see it, but I do own, and I've seen 3 times Overnight, which I think is a really good documentary, and I think it actually could have been a lot harsher.
Oh, it could have
So
been.
yeah, and then when they came out with part two, I was like, well, okay, maybe I'll watch it. And then they came out with something like the director's cuts of
Mhm.
them. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to get involved in all of this, but
There's a
maybe.
third one supposedly coming,
Yeah,
Well,
and
and
there's a TV series coming.
and a comic book series.
Yeah.
so apparently it's the only thing that Troy Duffy can make.
It's not the
And
only thing he's made, but okay. Go on.
and well, I guess maybe the only successful thing in a way. And so then when Jonathan asked me if I wanted to be on this, I was like, that means I got to watch Boondock Saints. And so I did an interview last night with Cliff Macmillan from a Scream Factory, and I thought, okay, well, let me find. This is around like 9 o'clock that we got done. I was like, well, let me see if I can find my Blu-ray steel case because I found it for like $5 at Target or Walmart in their bin. I'm like, oh, I'll buy it. I spent an hour trying to find it. I could not find this movie, and it
Maybe you
really
threw
started
it
to piss me
away.
off.
Maybe you threw it away because you're
Maybe I
like, I'm never.
sold it and I didn't
Yeah.
realize it. And so I thought, okay, fine. I know it's on Tubi, but then I got to deal with all the fucking commercials. And so I was watching it and then fell asleep. Woke up 20 minutes, got like 30 minutes into it, woke up 20 minutes later. Rewind. Okay, this is why I fell asleep at, I think. Fell asleep again for like another 20 minutes. This went on like 4 times.
Hmm.
And I had to keep rewinding it all the way back to the same 30-minute spot. And then it got to be like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, no. I thought, okay, maybe I could wake up at like 6 and then I'll watch Boondock Saints and then I'll watch, the documentary overnight. And I thought, I'm not waking up at 6 in the morning for anybody, especially not Troy Duffy. And then I contacted Jonathan this morning and said, you know what? I'm not going to do it. My neck is killing me, which it still does. And I'm just really tired. And then I thought, well, what if I could go on there and just kind of bash on him?
Always fun.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm here to do. So I think out of
Uh,
the three of you, I'm the one who likes this the least from only watching 30 minutes.
Well, clearly you misplaced your copy so that you could specially show up to Troy Duffy and get him to autograph it for you,
Oh God.
all right. So
or kick him in the nerds, either one.
let me go into some background here, guys, and explain some things that I found out by overnight. There was some stuff in overnight, and there was also stuff in an interview with Troy Duffy years later, where he's very candid and he's very open and honest about uh he doesn't do an apology tour. He doesn't say, I apologize for being a dick, or whatever. He just kind of explains like that was that was a lot or whatever. Anyway, I'm gonna get into this thing. So Troy, I wrote this all down so I could remember a lot of us. Troy Duffy moved to Los Angeles to pursue music. That was his that was his thing. He was in a band called The Brood, which I'm wondering if that was based on the David Cronenberg movie or not. He was working at a bar when he wrote the script for Boondock Saints. He actually got the idea for Boondock Saints when he saw a dead hooker coming out of his apartment complex, and
You mean
he
she was
had just
undead?
well, not I mean they're being wheeled
No,
out.
he got the idea because he saw Quentin Tarantino movies.
Yeah, well, he saw somebody robbing him, is
And
what I read.
yeah, so he knew some people in the film business and asked him to get him a copy of the script so he could see the format and make something. Be careful, Paul, what you've read, because this actually a lot of this came from his mouth. So
Hmm.
I would trust what he says over what some random person said.
I don't know that he's the perfect person to get information from either,
Yeah.
but
So basically he knew some people in the film business and asked him to get a copy of a script so he could see the format and write something. They give him a copy of Jack, the Robin Williams,
that's
Francis
funny.
Ford Coppola movie.
Wha-
And he took the basic format of Jack, like this, the format of the script, and used that as the format for Boondock Saints, so it looked
That's
like
funny.
a script. Um, he gave the script to a friend who worked in the friend that worked in the film business. The friend said this was good. Do you mind if I pass this around? Troy says sure, and boom, it's passed around so much it gets into a bidding war with different companies, including Miramax.
And can I break in a moment and say that that is not something that generally can be done right about now? Lucky
No,
motherfucker. I mean,
I know.
that's like a dream now, you
No, that's
know?
a dream back then too. Like
Yeah,
he
really.
was he was literally one of the only people who had never written a script before that got his script to
So
like first
lucky.
time writer, and so yeah, so
because
Uh,
they wanted Tarantino movies.
yeah, well, I mean,
they
that
did.
was that was a big thing then. Troy said, okay, so Harvey Weinstein wins the bidding war, comes to Troy's bar and makes a deal with him. The deal includes The Brood being on the soundtrack. Harvey agrees to buy the bar that Troy was working at 50-50 with Troy and pay him $30,000
Mm.
and make the movie for $15 million with Troy being the first time filmmaker.
And I would love to see someone make a short film about that scene with those two guys because they're pretty much both dicks. And I would love to have sat there and listened to that conversation.
Then watch Overnight, the documentary that actually has a lot of this in there.
Nice.
So yeah, it definitely worth that documentary. You want to do docs that rock? That is a doc that rocks
Yeah, I'll
because
have to check that
It
even
out.
should have.
though
It's too short, and there should have been more behind the scenes. Because, as I'm sure, Troy was not the nicest guy on set, from what we've seen of him.
actually every behind the scenes in that movie shows him having fun. He's a very nice guy.
Well, of course,
Very
they're not going
the
to show the bad
Well,
stuff.
they could because that movie paints him in a bad way. I'm surprised they didn't. I have a
I don't
feeling
know.
that
And this whole thing of using the script for Jack, come on, out of all the movies, okay, the internet was out there. I used to download
That's
screenplays around
no,
that
this
funny.
was
time.
95. This was
Yeah,
1995. The internet didn't have Drew Scriptorama at that time. They didn't have these things you could do. So they literally
yeah,
had to get
yeah,
him a
yeah. They did.
actual
They also
copy.
No, they did because I did, and there were screenplay programs. They were just on a disc.
I
So,
don't know.
dude,
You didn't
all
know.
you had to do was spend some money and which wasn't much because I afforded it on a retail budget and just buy, I think it was Magic Screenwriter or something like that. And you just pop the disc in and it formatted it for you. So, dude, you're not a triumph. You're not somebody who went against the grain. You read a shit script from a
It
great
was a shit
director.
script. It's a shit movie.
Yeah,
It's
the
like
worst.
Francis
Yeah,
Ford Coppola's worst movie.
yeah, and then you don't even know that you could buy screenwriting equipment. It reminds me of the guy in what was it, Love, that show that you and I watched,
Yeah,
Jonathan,
yeah,
and he
they,
spent like $20,000 on film equipment, and everybody laughed at him because he did no research on how to buy film equipment.
yeah.
So,
Well, I mean,
ugh.
that's a lot of people, so you're right. So a lot of people do shit like that, stupid shit like that. But anyway, and it makes for a good comedy, you know. So I don't know. This was sort of real life. This actually happened. So originally the casting involved names like Mark Wahlberg, Jim Carrey was up
Oh
for a role.
God.
He was like he was thought of for a role because uh was it Troy just just wanted to see him because he was doing stuff like the Truman Show at that time. And I guess he hadn't done that yet, but he was doing, trying to break out of doing regular comedy stuff. Um a very young Heath Ledger and a bunch of other A-list stars. Troy originally wanted Patrick Swayze and met
Mhm.
with him a few times.
I would have hated this movie even a lot more.
Meanwhile, the band gets a deal with Atlantic Records. Things are looking up, but then Troy gets a bit of an ego and ends up
A bit.
losing the deal with Miramax. Well, because I think a lot of it too is like at that time, and I'm not making any kind of justification for his actions. I'm just saying at that time, people are telling him, whispering in his ear, like, this never happens. You should, like, oh my God, you're amazing. This is
Well, and
great,
yeah, I get that, and it does happen. I mean, it's look at somebody like Justin Bieber. I mean, as I'm sure everybody in his ear, you're great, you're wonderful, you're doing things people have never done before. Oh my
Well,
God, look at you. So then he can go spit on fans and pee in buckets, that a janitor has to use because he thinks he's God because everybody around him is telling him
and
he
I
is.
think part of it too, especially if you're, no matter who you are, if you have a first time filmmaker and somebody else has put up the money for you, there is a lot of pressure on you to get it shit done the way you think it needs to be done, whether it is or not. And all of that pressure can really make you change your personality for the worse because
um,
people under those kind of duress on set when they're working and they're trying to get shit done and they're 12, 14, 16, 18-hour days tends not to bring out the best in people.
right. And another thing is so okay, so there's a great quote at the end of Overnight where it goes, no man is really changed by success. What happens is that success works on the man's personality like a truth drug, bringing him out of the closet and revealing what was
Like
always
booze.
inside his head,
Yeah, like
right?
booze.
Yeah, so like,
Well, and it's like I'm not going to name the comedian, but I used to like him quite a bit. But he went to a party where there was cocaine, and he goes, "Well, what does cocaine do to you?" And the guy goes, "Oh, it intensifies your personality." And then he responded with, "Yeah, but what if you're an asshole?" So that to me is Troy Duffy. Is the guy was already an asshole,
yeah, and
but he
success
just
made
became a
him just,
bigger
yeah.
asshole.
Now it seems like he's humbled out a little bit more. I mean, obviously with 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 this stuff. So I'm gonna finish this stuff up because there's a little bit more background. Things are looking up. Well, okay, I got to that part. Pissing off Harvey, which you had never wanted to do back then, and Harvey ends up putting the script in turnaround. As Troy puts it in the interview, turnaround is basically like a yard sale for scripts, and mostly only people make 50% back off the script, like if you sell it. So, Harvey's gonna sell it for, again, for like the 15 million he probably bought it for. He's only gonna make half of whatever on the turnaround by selling it, to whoever ends up buying it. So, what ends up happening is that, well, Atlantic Records drops The Brood once that happens, and the world seems to be coming down on him. Thankfully, Arnold Rifkin of William Morris Agency believes in the script and likes Troy enough where says he finds someone to buy the script for 100% and will get the movie made. They do. Cassian Elwes, which is Carrie Elwes' brother, helps out. He's the if you're interested enough to know about that, Cassian Elwes, Carrie Elwes's, I think, older brother, I want to say. He could be younger. He basically is the film and financing guy at William Morris Agency. So what I believe they do is if there's a great script at William Morris and they want it to get made, but nobody's buying it, they get Cassian to put up cash for it and or find cash for it. Yes, not that Elwes,
I know.
but the other one, the one who's in the behind the scenes. Not, and you see him as like an executive producer on a lot of movies. It's usually because he's, I think, found the money for the movies and stuff. So he found the money. The project goes to, I forgot what company, but it was some weird company, that very low budget company, and they end up making the movie for $7 million instead of $15 million, which I think was a better deal anyway, because if they had made it for was it 15 million, they would have had names like Patrick Swayze and Mark Wahlberg, and would have been a movie Paul would never have watched, as opposed to this movie, which had the had to cut their budget. They could afford Willem Dafoe, Sean Patrick Flannery, and Norman Reedus at the time, who wasn't a big name. He didn't get big till Walking Dead. And
I have to say, the parts that I really hate about this movie, I mean, I really didn't like the characters, even though they were kind of bumbling idiots. And I hate the whole vigilante thing. I hate the overt Christian stuff going on. There's a lot about this stuff that I hate. However, the way that it was shot, I thought was well done. I loved the way that they broke up the narrative in such a way that you saw the effects versus seeing what happened before, and that was reversed multiple times. That worked.
Well, kind of like a Tarantino thing, right?
Kind of like a Tarantino thing, except even more so. And then finally, my favorite thing about the movie was Willem Dafoe. Oh. Willem Dafoe made that movie bearable for me. He was such a great performance in that, in every possible way. I can't imagine anybody else doing that role justice.
Oh God, if Jim Carrey had done it, he would have
just that's who I think
over the top
played.
What?
I think that's who Jim Carrey would have played.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Jim Carrey and Patrick Swayze would have played that role, because they were both too old at the time to play the
this movie is a baboon's ass hair away from being a cartoon as it is. But Willem Dafoe manages to walk that line so that it's that, but it's also, over the top, but it also, he does such a great performance that he actually grounds it. He actually sort of grounds it back in reality. And that's a really, really hard thing to do, but he does it. And wow, what a great job. One of my favorite Willem Dafoe performances.
You don't like him in Spider-Man?
Spider-Man? Well, no. I mean, no.
You never watched it, probably.
I've seen it, yeah. It's like, I forget that he was in that shit.
He's great, though. I thought he was great in that.
He's good in Spider-Man. Yeah. I pardon me. I think the opposite of Paul.
You think so? The opposite is that
I thought the directing was garbage. I don't think that Troy knew what he was doing. The thing that you need when you're a first-time director is that you have to have a good DP and a good editor, because they will make you look good. I didn't like his directing. I didn't like the friggin' fades that were like every 5 minutes that were completely unnecessary. I
Are you talking
didn't
about when
like
they went to the flashbacks?
whatever the
Oh, the
fades led to.
transitions.
All the
Yeah, I
transitions,
did
yeah.
not like the fades. I thought it was annoying. I didn't like going back and seeing what it was because we knew it was these two guys. So it's not like it was a surprise that Bob walked into the room. No, it's the same two guys every
Right.
single
But
time.
Well,
they
yeah,
didn't
we knew
know.
that
So
part. It
We
was
knew that, but they
how. It
didn't
was
know
the
that.
how
Yeah.
that was
And
the interesting part.
that never bothered me because throughout the whole thing, which you haven't seen, so you don't know, but throughout the whole thing, every time that Willem Dafoe goes into the stories, he's basically coming up with the ideas of what's going on. Nobody else knows anything. The audience knows
Right.
that they're going there and doing these things.
And there's an argument to be made that this movie is really about uh, Willem Dafoe's character and how he perceives the world and how he perceives what's going on, and that's what I liked. That's the thing that grabbed me and held my interest because the other people I couldn't give two shits about. It's just they happen to be there providing the impetus and for the action and everything. It was having him figure things out all along, and even when he makes mistakes and he goes back, he's like, oh, okay, it wasn't six guys with the guns, it was one guy with six guns. When he finally figures that out, that was the cool part that I liked.
Yeah, yeah, because there was that one guy with six guns, which is a remark later used by the guy, the idiot, played by Bob Marley, by the way. His name is
Yeah.
Bob Marley, is a comedian, but he is not whatever. It's so funny to just see his name, and I'm like, Bob Marley's in this movie, what? And he's some Irish or some like I guess Irish guy or whatever, and he is hilarious. By the way, they shot this film in Canada. I did not
Yeah,
know that.
Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto. I didn't realize that when I first
Cheaper.
watched it. Yeah. So yeah, so for Boston, which I thought was kind of funny, it's like it's supposed to be Boston, yet it's Canada. I guess Canada can beat Boston. Um, but
but it
yeah,
can't be New York.
like I said,
I got a couple movies where they try to use New York or try to use Toronto as New York.
yeah, we've seen that. You talked about that in countless videos or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Jason
Um,
Takes Manhattan and Superman 3 are
Yeah.
in
pretty.
Canada, yeah. Um, but anyway, so basically, like what you're saying, Paul, is right. Like this is the story of Willem Dafoe's character coming to the realization that this is what's needed for this world because he like what the big discussion that really comes out of this movie, and they use that at the end where they have all these people who are sort of like saying, are the Boondock Saints good or bad? Is that, whatever. Well, the idea is like, should vigilantes, people take it into their own hands to get rid of criminals, to take down people who are basically a threat to just regular people, like, some person off the street's gonna mug you and shoot you or something, should there be somebody that takes them out before they have to, do that.
Something that would play a lot more positively these days in the era of Trump, by the way, because when this came out, this was around Columbine, and that was a very different feeling out there, very different situation.
That's true. This was 99. This was literally Columbine time. So
I remember when it came out.
I'm surprised this
This
movie even got released,
bombed. This
yeah.
bombed in the theater.
Yeah. But anywho, the movie ends up and interestingly enough, this is an independent film, because this is independently financed. This was not a studio because originally it was bought by a studio, but when they put it in turnaround, it's just a financial company that came in and bought it, and then another company came in and distributed it. So it wasn't even it wasn't even a Hollywood. This isn't a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, Weinstein lost interest when he had nobody to sexually, harass.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's only what two girls in the movie, really.
And
That's
that's the other thing. There's the very few women that are in there, characters that are in there are very, very one dimensional and very crappy and
well, I to me, I wasn't bothered by that because those characters were just they were just there for his scene. I don't even know. Honestly, if they weren't even there, it wouldn't have mattered.
It's a very guys movie.
Yeah, because
well, yeah, because that's because they're just ripping off Tarantino. That's what it's doing. And I get that you may want to go for Patrick Swayze and you end up with somebody else. That's just filmmaking. That's just what happens.
you didn't see the
So
cat scene, did you, Paul?
yes.
John, you did. You got that far?
Yeah, but I had because it's so poorly done, I had to go back and rewatch it like 3 times. I'm like, what the fuck did they blow up?
Yeah, it was the
And
cat.
then the guy goes, her cat, and I'm like, oh, because and I have to say, even with my love for cats and animals, they should have shown the cat blow up. Like actually have like a big furry thing on a table and explode it. Because
Yeah.
I had no idea what that
Well,
was.
and they did that, I think, because when I rewatched it, I was like, because originally I can't watch any kind of thing like that, but when I remember watching it, I go, wait a minute, yeah, you don't really see the cat at
Well,
all.
I don't really like that whole thing at all. A, because the violence against animals, but B, to me, that's the most direct Tarantino ripoff right
Yeah,
there.
from like Pulp
That's
Fiction.
Marvin.
Oh, it's right
Yeah.
from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
It's I don't believe Troy Duffy knows anything about screenwriting, and I don't think that he knows
Well, he
anything
doesn't.
about anything. I don't believe one thing that happened in the amount that I watched. I don't believe that they would not be, arrested for murder and that they would just be, oh, it was just self-defense. Okay, we'll just let them sit it out here while while the tiny group of newscasters that are out there, don't catch them and ask them questions. And then when they leave,
How do
they get
they
fucking
know?
coffee.
How do they know about ruining the blood samples with ammonia? Where did they get that information from? These two idiots.
I maybe
And how did El
Because
Ducci go from being a cold-blooded killer who's in jail forever with all these guards to just they let him go?
yeah.
Because it's bad screenwriting and it's what the screenplay demanded. So
Right, yeah.
it's
The Paul says that all the time,
yeah.
It's what
I
demands.
just yeah. I don't buy any of this stuff. I don't. I think that he is writing it from what he's seen on TV or what he thinks works.
But
And
I mean,
It's a fantasy. It's a fantasy.
they make that kind of thing when they do the scene where they fall off out of the what is it, the stuff at the top of the uh
Oh
the
yeah, in the
top of
apartment.
with the toilet.
no, in the scene where they come out and they take out all of the mafia guys in
Oh,
one
where
thing
they're
up in the
where they're
vents,
fighting up in the vent and they
and they
fall
fall
through.
in.
And
But like they're kind of mentioning that earlier, right? They kind of mention how in that scene, in that stuff, that what is it? That they're doing TV. This is bad TV writing. So it's funny because Troy Duffy knows that, right? He knows that what he's writing is bad TV writing, but he's doing it on purpose to
It's
kind
not
of.
just bad TV, it's
I
bad movie
know.
too, like Die Hard, where you get people like they could wander around through fucking AC ducts in buildings. You can't do that. That doesn't work. Humans can't fit in those things and move around. Sorry.
I mean, if you're going to do that, and because once again, I went back and rewatched it because it's done so poorly. It is you have them fighting because they're idiots. They drop through and they're completely puzzled. They're like, "Oh shit!" And you have all the Russian guys stand up and they're like, "Oh fuck!" And then they get the guns out and start shooting. And then and then it almost becomes like ballet or something with them turning and all that stuff. But in this they just drop and start shooting. Like there's no humor to it. There's no like, oh shit, we made a mistake because we're morons. It's just
Yeah,
immediately
it did.
drop
It did.
Russian
Consistent
and then
about that.
shoot. And there's no there needs to be a little bit of breathing room in there for them to realize the situation that they're in. And this whole thing of, oh wow, the rope, which serves no purpose for them to get it, oh now it has a purpose because they fell through the vent. Well,
Well, it
that's
had a purpose,
convenient.
I think, before. Like, that's why, like, they have that one scene where it's like, get your fucking stupid rope,
No, but they're
right?
arguing about the rope. And he goes, well, we can always use rope. And the guy's like, we don't need rope. He's like, no, we can always use rope. And then they fight about it in the vent.
I've got to carry a stupid rope.
Yeah, it's like, this
Oh,
is 30, I'm lugging 30
it
pounds.
takes
And
it's 30 pounds with, right? It's just
see, your
arguing.
The rope
accents
that they
are as
don't
good as
that they
theirs.
think they
Yeah,
don't need actually causes them to fall through, and then they get tangled up in it and ends up using it anyway because they're idiots.
yeah,
But why get the rope? The rope needs to serve something before that.
right.
There
I know, I
needs to,
totally agree.
you can't just introduce something and then, and then it cause it just, the rope needs to serve a purpose before this happens.
The knife does. You
Well,
know?
getting like knives and guns and things, that's typical stuff of this type of movie. But
Right. Especially like the Rambo knife. Like, come on, you look at it and you're
Right,
like,
right. But
obviously.
they kind of point that out and make a deal of that where he gets the knife and he's like, oh, Rambo, blah, blah, blah. But then he ends up using it. So he does, that does spot up and it does come back later to fulfill its purpose.
yeah, and the knife is fine, the guns are fine,
Well,
the
I mean,
that type of stuff is fine.
they always say if you introduce a gun in the first act, it better go off by the third act. If you introduce rope in the first act, it's got to go off and before the third act, and it
Now,
did. So
the
I mean, I
one
don't know, it didn't bother me.
the one thing about that scene that bothered me is the fact that they also seem very, very enamored of that big giant 50 caliber machine gun. So it's kind of like setting you up to think that they would have that. So I'm wondering, man, if they had tried to lug that through the duct, that would
No,
have been even more of a cartoon. But it would also have made more sense if they fell through and they just were twirling around and they were firing that thing and that was liquefying everybody inside.
I think that would
It's
have made a lot more noise.
Oh yeah,
And
well,
yeah,
it's only in the film because Troy Duffy could get it.
yeah,
He
yeah.
wanted a room filled with guns,
yeah,
and he wanted an arsenal. And somebody goes, you know what I can get you? He's like, yeah, get me that. And then,
yeah.
I mean, just to have one of the brothers aiming at the other brother, I'd be like, what the fuck? What are you doing? Why are you
Yeah.
aiming the gun at me?
Right.
Well, they were
Because
doing
they,
stuff like that all the time. Like, remember the next scene after that, after the falling out of the vent and doing all that stuff was their friend coming to go kill those guys. They only had a 6-shooter and stuff. And they
oh my
were
God, I hated him.
he was
Oh,
actually, I
Rocco.
believe he was a friend of Troy's.
Yep, yep.
So he was
The actor is fine. The character was so annoying of him running around all the time. Like when he goes into the girl's apartment and he's like, we got to get everything, we got to go. And all he's doing is putting in like albums into his
well, I
duffel
think that was
bag.
his that
And
he was just
cans of food.
grabbing things that he thought were valuable that he would want,
Panicking.
Yeah,
Why?
because those people are gonna come after him. The people,
So you don't
the
waste
mob
time
people.
grabbing stuff from an apartment that would serve you no purpose for later. This isn't Shaun of the Dead where he's going to throw albums at zombies.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
know,
you
but
grab stuff
he,
that's useful. You grab knives and
Well, I
hammers
mean,
and
I didn't mind it because he's already demonstrated that he's an idiot. So
see,
yeah,
I couldn't take these characters. I thought every single person in this movie was annoying, and all they were doing was yelling at each other,
I
that is
love,
constantly
true. That
yelling,
is
I
which is
true.
probably why I woke up every
yeah,
time, is that somebody was yelling at one another.
he.
And I know it was meant to be funny, but I'm sorry, Troy, you don't have a good sense of humor.
Speaking of funny, we got that scene with Ron Jeremy talking with him
Never a good
and
thing.
well, we back then nobody thought that. Like nobody, no people were like thought it would be funny to have Ron Jeremy, one of the ugliest porn stars in the world, being in a movie. Nowadays, yeah, no. Well, it's so funny because that
Well,
had
I think
that
he's in
and
jail now.
Harvey Weinstein. I mean,
Right.
two people that I wonder if they're in the same jail and they're all hanging out together. But anyway, uh so anyway, he was in that scene where they tell that joke and he's being told to say these derogatory words I'm not going to say and
Well,
everything.
he says the N word. And
He
here's the
says the
thing.
N word.
This is what would have made that funny. So both the mob boss and Ron Jeremy, whenever that long-haired guy, who I don't
Rocco.
like,
Funny
Rocco.
man.
So as he's telling the joke, he just says like black man, and then they of course say the N word, and he goes, "Oh yeah, 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 that's what I said." If he kept doing that through the joke, and they kept, or yeah, through his joke, and they kept correcting him, I think it could have worked
I
because
thought it
then
worked. I thought it was funny.
I
I
didn't think
thought
so
it,
because then he says the N word like 3 times. I'm like, oh, well, okay, well, now we're Quentin
well,
Tarantino again in Pulp Fiction, where he says this isn't, dead inwards, storage. It's like, how many times can we get away with using that word?
well,
And
I think there was a difference with that, like because he didn't want to say it, but he said it because it was his boss sort of threatening him about saying it.
not
Like
really. He didn't threaten, he just stared at him while he was telling the joke. Now, if you pulled out a gun and sat there and said no, N word, and then he could continue the joke because he's being
Yeah, the
threatened.
joke was crap. That whole thing was crap. But the best part of that was at the end when he's finally gotten through the whole thing, and then the boss is like, "Tell me another,"
yeah, tell me
and now
another one.
he's still on the hot seat. That was the best part of that
That yeah,
part
that was the best part of that scene.
because
And
he's
remember,
like,
this is Ron Jeremy when he was still kind of thin.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
He
yeah.
didn't look like the Michelin man yet.
I didn't mind Ron Jeremy. He's was appropriately sleazy for that particular role. I thought that was fine.
Good casting choice. By the way, I'm gonna detour and talk real quick. I got to meet Norman Reedus, in person at Texas Frightmare weekend. I was with my friend Karen. She was gonna be an actress in one of my movies. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and then we kind of lost touch. Karen and I did. But I was with Karen, and Karen was talking with another actor, and Norman sat down next to me, right? And he looks over at me in an Irish accent, in his Boondock Saints accent, right? He goes, "Is that your girlfriend?" And I go, no, she's just a friend who's working on a movie with me." And he looks at her and goes, "You should make her your girlfriend." And I was like, if I look like you, I was like thinking, if I look like you, Norman, maybe I could just do that. But
Well,
like,
yeah, when you happen to be part of two of the biggest cult shows of all
well,
time.
at the time he was not Walking Dead. I met him before Walking Dead.
Oh, okay,
And
interesting.
so Walking Dead didn't air till the fall. I met him in the spring of 2011. And I didn't like Walking Dead wasn't even something talked about. So I only knew him from Boondock Saints. And
Gotcha.
I was extremely happy to be sitting next to him because I love that movie. We started talking, we talked about, he said if I had any movies for him to pitch to him, he gave me his email address at the time.
Nice.
However, I didn't have anything I was like okay to pitch to him or
Oh
whatever.
man, you take that anyway, man.
That's when
Shit.
you go home and
Yes.
I could not think of anything that I could like I wasn't ready at that time, but
think about
if
it,
I
you're the guy who could have created Walking Dead. You just be like, what's popular? What's popular?
now
Zombie
I
movies. Okay, let's do zombie. Okay, Norman, you're in a zombie
And
world.
year
honestly, it's the same kind of thing. They're both vigilante characters.
well, a year later, I see him at Blood on the Beach, which is a horror convention in Virginia Beach,
Used to
or
be.
was, yeah, used to be. There's a whole backstory on that. But yeah, so I went to go say hello to him. He had guards now. He had security walking with him. And so I walk up and I go, "Hey, Norman." And one of those guards goes, "Hey, back up." And I was like, "Whoa, okay." I was like, "Hey, I was just wanted to say I met you like a year ago and wanted to say hello again." He was like, "Oh, hey." He looked he looked a little tired. I don't know if it was just an exhausting day of signing autographs and all that stuff. But he was like, "Hey." And he walked away, right? Whatever. It was like, oh man, like year ago, it was like a different time,
Sure. I'm
when right
sure.
before people blow up. And
Right after that,
you
I'm
know,
sure he was probably exhausted. It was a whirlwind for him.
yeah, so it's harder to like chat with him. But I loved meeting him. Sean Patrick Flannery, I saw at the thing too. He was hanging out with a bunch of people. But I never went up and talked to him because he didn't come sit down next to me. Norman did. You know what I mean? Like Sean Patrick Flannery just seemed like he was having a fun time just being there, with everybody, all the
Can we
fans.
just talk for 5 seconds about the kiss? about the Willem Dafoe kiss when he's in drag, looking horrible, by the way, and the guy just buys it, which is, of course, ridiculous. But he didn't just give like a quick peck on the cheek. Hell no, he completely went for it. There was a lot of tongue and biting, and wow. I was just like, and then, like, I think a few seconds later, he's like, it was too much. It was too much. So I have to wonder, is that what he was talking
No, no,
about?
no, no. He was talking about because he killed the guy. So he killed that guy by the time he did that, and he was like thinking, he's crossed the line now. But then he goes and then shoots
So
the
that's
guy.
the line he crosses?
Yeah, yeah.
Killing the guy as opposed to tonguing him?
No, he was
Or tonguing him
gay.
before that?
He was gay, so that to him was nothing.
Oh, I know, but still, I mean,
No, no,
yeah, but
that
it's different when you're doing it with a complete stranger that you're intending on
no,
murdering.
no. He had
Yeah.
no, yeah, he had no that is no qualms. He had qualms with murdering somebody that uh the point of what his character was to me was he was sort of in the beginning of it he's the profiler. He's the guy trying to figure out all of these things and find out what's going on with the murders and why this is all happening and telling all of them Greenlee and Duffy and all these other characters, which I was wondering why Troy Duffy put his own name.
Ego.
Yeah.
Ego. Ego.
It's oh well, I caught that there. You do that was not very subtle. But yeah, so he had all these guys.
You
He
got to
was
start
telling
doing
them,
that, John Ward.
yeah, he was starting to kind of tell people what was going on, and then once he started realizing that, you know, especially when he got to the scene inside the what is it, the confession booth, and he's telling the guy, I what I think these guys are doing is actually good because there's so much red tape and there's so many loopholes that happen with the law that maybe this is what the world needs right now and stuff like that to the priest. And the priest there is telling you it's never okay to kill, you know, right? Like you get that sort of.
Well, but the thing about the priest, what he says, what changes it is when he says, you can't kill because of the laws of man, and he says, well, the laws of God are above the laws of man, which is to me the worst fucking thing. I mean, I wanted to just punch that priest right in the goddamn face for that. But that's the thing that convinces him finally to just go over and say, oh, okay, you're right. That gives me permission to go out and become a murdering asshole, just like these murdering assholes that I'm killing. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, well, I mean, and I don't know, maybe I don't know Troy Duffy is a Catholic or not, you know. I don't find him to be a very Christian based person. I think he's uh
Hence, probably why he is.
Yeah, usually that's how
eh,
it is.
I don't know.
Yeah, people that are Mary Poppins aren't normally Christians, but raging assholes are. No offense,
So,
Right.
Jonathan.
so
I mean,
It's
I'm a Christian, but I
it's
hope I'm not a raging asshole. I don't know.
no, but they normally are huge hypocrites
there
on
there is
things.
there is a part that certainly definitely are. They're the ones that tend to get the most press and the most coverage and the most thing because it's all about them. You generally don't hear about the other quiet people who just sort of do their own thing because they're not the ones making all the fuss and all the attention.
Right.
Yeah, and I always find it funny, and this is in movies and real life, like something like this where they have the rosary beads, but yet they're going around killing people. And that's, and there's also tattoos all over them. And in the Bible, it does say, do not desecrate yourself.
Well,
And so it's so I'll be walking down the street or somebody will come into work, and all of a sudden there's this giant tattoo of Jesus on their arm, and then they got maybe something violent on the other side. And it's kind of like, okay, well, I guess you're not going to heaven because you just desecrated your body,
It's
you
the
know.
whole thing of thou shalt not kill except
Yeah.
uh,
So
well, okay, because like, uh, my other issue, a lot of times is like war, right? We send people out to war to kill, right? I mean, it's to
Yes, we
protect our
do.
country, but but they're set out like if they have to kill, they kill. A lot of the people that are soldiers and everything are Christians, or at least they're sort of like the head people. A lot of people like I went to a Christian academy, Fork Union Military Academy for summer school, you know, and every Sunday, if we
Okay.
weren't gone on that Sunday, we had to go to church, and everything. So they were very much a
Uh-huh.
religious kind of thing. Even if we didn't want to, it didn't matter. We were going to church. Like they were going to grab us and pull us and make us go to church on that Sunday. And now, I'm not saying that's bad. I mean, I'm a Christian, so it didn't bother me. But, obviously there were atheists who were just stuck there because their mom and dad wanted them to get summer school or whatever, right? And summer school at Fort Union was completely different than regular military, because we didn't have to do all the things that the regular school, sort of made you do. But you still had to go to church, you still had to do a lot of the Christian stuff. And so the military is very Christian, which is so funny and ironic that a lot of what, you know, is talked about is thou shalt not kill, you know what I mean? And you're right. It's like that thou shalt not kill, except
Yeah.
people who are
Well,
a threat
that
to us.
theologically speaking, there's a lot of people who have problems with that, but then the argument for that is, Jesus says, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, which is the way of saying pay your taxes, obey the laws, do the stuff that you're supposed to do. They don't, the government doesn't want you running around killing people, but if they do have an enemy and they're going to shove you in a uniform and give you a gun and push you out the door and say go kill those guys, that's okay as long as it's under those circumstances. It's ridiculous, but that's society, and it's society all over the world. So
There was
Well,
a,
but
a
also remember, since you guys are talking about war, there are no atheists in foxholes.
well,
right,
that's the
yeah.
saying. I don't know if
Yeah,
that's the
so
truth.
it's something where I can believe where that is kind of true, and it's because like Jonathan said, like the military is very Christian, so you're gonna get an atheist who's which I am, and you're gonna get in a foxhole, and you're gonna die in like a couple of minutes. All of a sudden, you're gonna be going, oh crap. So it's I just find it funny that when you look at these type of things, or you look at I don't know, a rapper, or you look at something where they got the giant cross right here, and they got but yet they're all tattooed, and and it's all about the gun, and and that's what I found kind of silly with
Well,
Boondock Saints
Well,
and some of these other
most
movies.
Christians don't know what the hell they're talking about because they don't bother to read the Bible. They only swallow what's been spoon fed to them. That's why you have these people out there making big shows of themselves praying in public when it clearly says, don't be like the hypocrites and pray in public. Go pray privately where nobody can see you. They don't bother to follow that. They don't bother to follow most of the stuff that's in the Bible. It's,
um,
it's just, it
there's
just
a
doesn't help them.
there's a song I really like called "This Is War" by Smile Empty Soul. I don't know if you guys heard of that band or not.
Nope.
Um, but it goes like, I'm just a normal man. I wouldn't hurt nothing at all, but here we are. Our leaders have a plan. I'd only kill if it's for them. Now here we are, right? And it talks about he drove in a car, flew in a plane to come to your house and kick your door in. Now it's down to this. It's just you and me. I'll blow your fucking head off for my country. And it's pretty brutal, like, because it's pretty much exactly what this, what being a soldier is about, murdering people because like you said, the leaders say that person's bad, go kill them.
Yeah.
They're our enemy. They're going to kill us, so you must kill
And of
them before they kill
course,
us.
the leader makes sure that they're not the ones doing it, or their kids or their friends out there doing it.
Right. And so these guys, these Boondock Saints, are basically, I mean, they're not the leader. I mean, they are the leaders, I guess, because there's no other people, but they're not. At one point, Rocco says we should be recruiting, or whatever. Could you imagine if that's where it went, where they just recruited a bunch of like became like the Expendables, where they just got a whole group of people. They're just shooting whoever they wanted, and I
Yeah.
think that would have been a crazy
And that's
situation.
really the source of my distaste for this film is because, you know, what they're saying is okay, under the laws of man, they're still murderers for going out and shooting people, even if the people they're shooting are killers. They're still murderers. But under the law of God, as they interpret it, it's somehow okay. That's a really, really shitty message to be sending to
Yeah.
someone because all anybody has to do in order to justify any heinous activity they want is to say, well, my religion says I can do this,
Well,
or
that's what
God
they
told me
do.
to
That's what
do
they do
this.
anyway, without this movie saying that,
I know, I
I
know.
mean, we how many terrorists do we have that attack, attack America? And it's usually because it's terrorist organization
Well, even in the
who,
everyday, there are people who are discriminated against and who are shit on just because people think that's what their God is telling them to do, when
right.
really they're just using religion as a way to justify their shitty fucking beliefs.
But then, I mean, shouldn't it be okay if like if a mother drowns her two kids in the bathtub and then she goes to court and goes, "Well, God told me to.
No,
God told me that they." I mean, no, but I'm saying it sarcastically. Like
yeah.
shouldn't that? I mean, if that's your defense, then a court, should be like, "Oh, well, okay, well, God told you to, so I mean, it's okay." So okay, you're free to go.
Weirdly enough, they both had that, I guess, had a dream or something. They woke up, remember? And that's when they decided together, like, that they were going to take out everybody, And I was like, wait, did they have the same dream? Is this like a supernatural
Convenient.
thing? Like, supernatural thing, of like them both wake, 'cause they both
No,
wake up at the same way. Like,
yeah, they just couldn't afford to make two dreams, two different dreams or similar dreams, and
well, no, I mean, I don't think you see, do you see the dream? I don't think you see it. I mean,
if it's the one that I'm thinking of where they're in the bed and it's the different flashes, it's the same exact thing, and then they just
yeah.
both wake up.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't think it was like,
While
I
the
don't know if
water is
the,
dripping on them from the rainstorm.
yeah,
Yeah.
because they killed out those guys, which, I mean, in the beginning, yeah, you're right, Paul, to go back to that part where they get arrested, they sort of didn't get arrested. They talk
They're
to,
brought in for
they're brought in
questioning.
for questioning. They explain themselves, what happened. Paul Smecker, hit the, was Willem Dafoe's character. It's just like, okay. Well, it sounds like it's just self-defense. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, you
That's it.
guys are,
Yeah, you
you're
guys
free
are
to
free to
leave.
go.
I like that you could speak some different
And then
languages.
they were like, oh, we don't want to leave right now.
And I love how one FBI agent just takes over the local police department and says, "Oh, I'm running everything from now on." Yeah, no, that's not really how that works.
No,
Yeah,
because Troy Duffy just watched some cop show on TV and figured out that's how things worked, or just threw it together himself. I'm sorry, even if you kill someone in self defense, you're going to jail.
right,
It's you're
There's
going to
going to
get
be an
arrested.
inquiry.
Yeah, you're just not going to be charming the guy with different languages, and then another cop whose sister, and I believe he even says like, "We respect you" or something, and he hands him two cups of coffee.
Yeah, that was crazy because even if you buy the whole thing where okay, these are drug dealers and mafia people and therefore the FBI is involved and he's no longer interested in them, that doesn't mean that he's forgiven for all of the local ordinances, which I'm sure are against murder. So that means that he goes from the FBI's problem to the local PD's problem. And yeah, they are going to arrest him. They're going to
right.
shove until there's a hearing or an indictment or something, you know?
My The biggest problem I had, and I never had this problem before, I guess, but I really hate the court scene at the end, where
Yeah.
they just take out that one guy, and it was like as if like even the FBI is helping him
And they
now,
forced that poor
and
girl to watch.
I know. Well, I think she was one of the victims who was whatever, but she didn't want to watch
Yeah,
him
she's
get
a
killed.
victim again.
Yeah, in a way. And then they kind of and then they murder the guy or whatever, the head mafia guy who I'm surprised got out of there, anyway, because there was a fucking, I mean, the was it the Duke or whatever who turned out to be the father of the guys,
Conveniently.
which is weird because I'm like, didn't they not recognize him when they were shooting at him? Like, I mean, but that's the problem because we only hear that their father taught them that prayer. We did not see any kind of backstory or hear any backstory about the father. So, like, when it's a surprise and he just comes up and says, you know, basically, children, I'm here, in a way,
it's
it.
it's a fantasy. It's a cartoon fantasy. It's a right wing cartoon vigilante fantasy. So that's that there's the reason why I don't particularly care for the movie. However, like I said, I thought some of it was shot really interestingly. I liked some of the narrative, even if it was accidental. I still like some of it, and the performances I thought were good, especially Willem Dafoe.
Yeah. And
I think if this was to kind of go off of what Paul said, if this was scary movie type of humor, I probably would have enjoyed it more. If he's spoofing
like
these
Tarantino
movies,
movies or something.
Yeah,
yeah, and the
that would have
cops
been
are
better.
worshiping them and bringing the cat blowing up where instead of just the little bit of blood on the wall, it covers the entire room and them from this little cat. There could have been some humor in there that would have maybe, yeah, if it was more of a spoof or something.
And
I
what would have been
think
even funnier is if you remember when he's grilling the poor girl about the name of the cat. If she said the cat's name was Marvin, that would have been funny because
It was Skippy.
yeah, Skippy.
Yeah,
But
which
that was a joke that they missed. They could have had.
yeah, I mean, and that wasn't a joke because just like, at one point he was just like, "What's that fucking cat's name? What's the fucking cat's name?
oh my
I
god,
dare you to tell me what the fucking cat's name is." And she's like, Skippy, Skippy." And he's like, "Fuck, what color was it, you dumb bitch?" And I'm like, uh, you know, like you're
this
making
is
me
going
not like him a lot, a lot less
And
because
then he's
he's
like,
just
I kind of feel like a little bit like an asshole. You think?
yeah,
no, you're a
you're
very
a
big
huge
asshole.
asshole. I guess my big thing with why I never watched this or anything except for the documentary is Troy had a perfect opportunity that none of us got and
Oh,
still will
yes.
never get to this day. And being such a fucking asshole, and if he was already one or became one, I mean, it's this is one of those one in a billion chances.
Lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, and it's and he blew it all
Mm.
because he's an a-hole. And that just
Well,
made me mad because it's you're at that time, even though we did hear rumors of Harvey Weinstein, you wanted to work for Harvey Weinstein. He was the
mm,
guy that won Academy Awards. You
I
know,
mean, he blew it in that he could have made a much better movie, but on the other hand, he's like a huge cult favorite now. That movie is going to be going around forever because there's a certain segment of population that loves that kind of fantasy.
Um, so I chatted
he
last night with Vincent Pereira, who is, good friends with Kevin Smith. Kevin had actually told Vincent about this guy, because he had heard stories, about him. It's all over Miramax,
That would
all
be
over that stuff
interesting.
and everything. And I asked Vincent if Kevin had met Troy, and he said he doesn't think so. He never found out that information, but he said he doesn't think so because Kevin in 99, 98, all that stuff was still living in Jersey. He wasn't really living in LA like he does now, and everything. So he was living in Jersey. He wasn't over there all the time, so he probably never actually
You,
physically met him.
you know what's interesting, Moody? What was the other movie that you showed me that was with the
Amongst friends.
yes? If those guys had gotten the same opportunity that Troy had gotten, and they'd gotten the funding and been able to make a better movie, that would have been great. That would have been a much better movie, and I
Because
would have rather have seen that.
yeah, so John, I don't know if you know this. There's a movie called Monk's Friends. It was written and directed by Rob Weiss, who went on to do Entourage and Ballers. I think you said earlier you were watching Ballers or something, right? So,
yeah.
Rob Weiss, Rob Weiss was a little bit like Troy Duffy at the time. Like he was sort of it was a sort of an asshole kind of character person
Yeah,
back then. And he got, but he got the opportunity to direct an independent film, and it was called Amongst Friends,
it's a
and it was
few
pretty
years
damn.
earlier.
It was a pretty good movie. I mean, it wasn't Reservoir Dogs or any of those movies that end up
Mira
really making,
Sorvino. Oh, so young and pretty.
but it was trying to be Goodfellas. It was trying to be a Martin Scorsese type of thing, but just done with like real kind of people, not like
Ish.
yeah, like the people there were trying to be mob, but they were Jewish characters.
And they
They
were too
weren't.
young. They were way too
Yeah,
young.
yeah. So they were trying to be like made men and stuff, but they were, they were young and they were Jewish. And really, unless I guess Jewish mafia, I don't know, whatever. You hear about that, so I don't know
Oh
if
yeah,
that's
used back in the day before the Italians, the Jewish mafia was pretty big and pretty strong.
um Troy Duffy in his interview with the guy from indie film Hustle said that he was really good friends now with Joe Carnahan, who sort of also
I love
had.
Joe Carnahan.
Yeah, but also in the beginning had a very like his movie that you own, John. I don't know if Paul does,
Blood,
but
guts,
you own
bullets, and octane.
Blood Gets Bullets and Octane did not
Yeah,
do very well. Like it was not as well received.
No, but it was shot in Sacramento, which I appreciated, and it was independent. He was a used car dealer guy, and so that's where some of the film takes place. But I remember it was Siskel and Ebert who reviewed the film, and even though they gave it thumbs down, they said this is a really talented guy. We can't wait to see what he does next. This is a
Yeah.
good place to start. But he goes, the guy's next film is probably going to be really good. So they
What was
hyped
his
him.
next film after Blood Guts? Was it Narc or something?
I want to say yes that it was Narc, and then that's the one that Tom Cruise got involved with. And then after
Joe.
that, he was supposed to do Mission Impossible 3 and had the falling out, which he does blame himself for because that's
Yeah.
probably where ego came in.
Yeah, and I think that's what him and Troy Duffy sort of bonded with is like they kind of both kind of screwed up their careers at one point or whatever. And yeah, so Narc was the second one he did.
Great
It
movie.
was Jason Patrick Ray Liotta movie. Then he did a was it there was a thing called like the BMW films, like short films. I had the DVD. It had all these
I
short
own it. Yeah,
films.
it's yeah, like it's a bunch of directors. I'm blanking on
And he
the
did one
drive,
of
the
it is called
driver,
yeah. The one he
the
did was
hire.
called Ticker. Yeah, The Hire. And then what is it? Smoking Aces was next and then he went on to
Which did good on video, so they did a sequel to that. I mean, he came back. I mean, because he
yeah,
eventually went on to do the A Team and the Gray, and
yeah, The
yeah, The
Gray and
Gray I've seen.
Stretch, which Jason Statham movie. I think was it Jason Statham? No, that's not right. Is it? No, Patrick Wilson movie. And we were just talking about how much we love Patrick Wilson,
yeah.
and everything. But that was an interesting. So he had done all these, things. So, I mean, honestly, I think at some point I do want to review Blood, Bullets, and Octane, which, blood was it Blood, Bullets, and Octane? Is that what
Blood, guts, bullets, and octane.
and Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane. And
The
I know,
musical.
The music.
I think Paul should watch it. I don't think he has.
I
No, I
saw it
haven't.
before I knew who Joe Carhan was. I mean, I because I worked at a video store, and I showed you I sent you a picture of the DVD box. I mean, this is the worst box I've ever seen. And it is, it's horrible if you compare it to what the VHS box is, which was the poster, which is really nice. And that's why I watched the movie. I'm like, oh, this looks cool. And it's got a great title, but I bet it's a Tarantino ripoff. And which it kind of is. I mean, it's done in that vein. But it's a great movie for a guy who just worked at a car dealership.
I mean, I never heard of it, but it definitely has like a love and a 45 kind of vibe coming off of it just from the title. I don't know if
Yeah,
it's anything like that.
it's
I
it's
love that particular movie, by the way.
And you know what? There were some good ripoffs, like California, started with a K, was a ripoff of Tarantino. Like there were some ripoffs of him at that time that were okay, that were decent,
Oh,
you
there
know.
there were there were good ones that were out there, sure. And I think I probably would like Boondock Saints better if it wasn't for the history. If it wasn't just for Troy. If it was more of a struggle, that it was this guy who worked at a bar and he made this movie. And he wanted this actor, but he got this actor. He had this budget, but then he had to deal with this budget. That would be different than just hearing, because the only reason why the documentary Overnight is made is because he's a dick.
Well, no,
That's it.
so he talks about it in the interview, but like those guys were his friends. the
Right.
the documentary guys, and they were at the bar and they saw all of this happening, and they said, would it be cool if we document this for the behind the
But if
scenes.
he was a nice guy and he struggled to get the movie made, the documentary would not be interesting at all. It would have just been a little special feature on the
Right,
disc.
they
But
said.
because he's an a-hole, we all watched it.
Right. And they said like this would be something that film students can watch or whatever. And yes, this is the thing that film students can watch. There's a part in the documentary, Paul, I'm seriously, you gotta see the documentary. But there's a
Yeah, at
part
some
where
point I
he's
will.
sitting down and he's been asked by, and this is after Boondock Saints gets made and everything. He gets sent to to talk to students, film students, and he is treating them like absolute garbage.
Hmm.
He's like this one girl's trying to ask him a question. He's like, "No, you're fucking wrong. You're fucking wrong. Don't you fucking say that. That's absolutely, you don't know what you're fucking talking about." Well, and I'm like, dude, you only made one movie. Like, calm yourself. Like, be this the what I took from that documentary, if anything, is gratitude. Be grateful for where you are.
Sure.
If you're given $300,000, right? Go and try to get the movie made. The guy in overnight, they're having a discussion with the producer, right, over the phone. And he said, "Why isn't this getting made? Why isn't this movie getting made?" And he goes, "Well, there's a couple problems. One problem is that you're not putting, like, you guys aren't putting in the money for this movie, so it's getting put into like the background, right? Like they're not caring about this movie because nobody's paying for it except for Miramax, and Miramax has other movies that they're paying for that are bigger and that they want to concentrate on, basically." And then the second thing is he needed Troy to get into a room with the people, right? And what ends up happening is they try to get on the phone with Meryl Poster, a female worker there, like a producer there, big high person at the time. Now she works for she's the president of Superb Film or Superb Entertainment, I think is what it's called. But so she did not like Troy. Troy was
What a
abrasive.
Shocker.
surprise.
Troy was abrasive. He was very misogynistic. He was at the time, he was very much the anti what she was looking for Miramax. So a lot of what Troy thought was Meryl Poster kind of put this movie on hiatus because she didn't like Troy and didn't want this movie getting made because I mean, once again, look at the script. It's all guys. There's barely any girls,
Right.
which is Tarantino and fine for that kind of movie. It's a guy's movie. It's Rambo. It's Reservoir Dogs. It's all these movies that are meant for guys, right? And the problem is, especially back then, diversity and other stuff were starting to kind of, women, they were trying to get women to, so if they had put a woman in there as maybe it was a brother and sister, that might have been an interesting story too. Like it could have been
Well,
a
they
cool.
I
could
don't.
just
I
done
didn't.
a
I
little
don't
bit
think that would
more
be.
realistic, or I don't know. They could have fit in a woman or two. They didn't have to. I mean, even as much as I hate to say it, as much as Willem Dafoe was great in that role, and I can't see somebody else doing it. I could see a female in that role, you know.
Right. A Sigourney Weaver. Could you imagine Sigourney Weaver in that role? You know? I don't know if she would have kissed the guy like that or whatever, like Willem Dafoe did. But
Mhm.
so what were you saying, John, when I mentioned that you were saying something too. You
Well, there's um you see in Overnight the scenes of him, yeah, on the phone,
mhm.
Troy, and he's screaming at people.
Yeah.
And it's like, no wonder this thing didn't get made. You're yelling at everybody that you need to get this movie made. And yeah, I mean, maybe make one of the cops that's just in the background a woman. I don't think it needed to be all guys. And you know how I feel about these type of things. I mean, I'm glad Madam Web bombed. So I mean, it's just a shit movie. But I mean, what do you expect from the writers of,
I mean, at least
Morbius?
he
But
does have a gay character and some gay characters in there, and I don't
which
know.
I was surprised about.
Yeah, I was surprised about too. When I first saw it, I didn't. That's generally not what's done, at least back then.
Yeah, and
So that was good to see.
it was good to see, and it wasn't a cartoon like of
Yeah, he was
of
pretty
that.
catty.
It was very catty, but like I like that. Like I thought that he was fun for that character,
I want to cuddle. Don't be such a fag.
Yeah. That that scene that scene was so awkward. It was
It
like
was very awkward.
I was like, wait a minute, what is going on here? I was like wondering what did Willem Dafoe think when he was doing that? And then he called the bartender a fairy. And I was just like, hmm. And then like a lot of these things
Pour the
would
drink,
not
you fairy.
yeah, he wouldn't like there's some things that just would not fly today. It's
Well, I mean, maybe he did it because he wanted to get those comments out. I mean,
Mm.
if you're Samuel L. Jackson in a Quentin Tarantino film and every other word out of your mouth is the N word,
yeah.
what are you gonna,
But
it's done by Samuel L. Jackson. It's a
if
black
you
guy
had
who's saying it.
if you had made this a woman character and she was a lesbian, the thing is, what is she? What are you gonna what insults are you gonna call her? Like dyke, I guess is
Well,
the only
you
thing.
there's a lot of stuff that, but and she could make stuff. She could make comments too. I mean, rug
Mhm.
muncher and scissorer
And
and
that would
all this
make
type of stuff.
sense if she has to kiss that one guy and she's doesn't really want to have to do it, but she's got to sell the role. You know what I mean? So that could have been done if they would cast the right actress for that.
Yeah, it
So
would have
now, but today, if they remade it, it would be two female assassins. All the cops would be female.
that would be if Hollywood remade it.
And they wouldn't be bumbling idiots.
Yeah, they
No,
would.
they would be Mary Sue's,
Yeah.
Yeah,
who
they
would
would
be
have.
absolutely perfect in every way possible.
Yeah, and I'm hoping like because Troy doesn't seem like that type that would allow that to happen to his story, or whatever. But maybe I don't know. Maybe he's a sellout. He would be a sellout now because he'd just be happy somebody's
I mean,
interested in his script,
think if they
or
did,
whatever.
gender swap it, but it was more like Romy and Michelle do those two characters.
Yeah.
That would be interesting.
Oh well, Mira Sorvino and what's her
Yeah,
name? Phoebe from Friends.
Yeah.
Lisa Kudrow.
there's sort of airheads.
Yeah, that could see, but then that'll go into the parody kind of scary movie
Mhm.
aspect of it,
Be a lot
which
more fun.
it would be more silly. And then you could do really terrible stuff with the cops because it's a parody,
Mhm.
So and Paul talks about this all the time on a lot of our things, especially when we have cops in movies, that people just don't do enough research on cops and don't and right
Yeah.
now, especially, we have so much information. You can just look up on Google and you can find out information about like how do cops interact with suspects,
Dude, dude She-Hulk. They said none of the writers knew how to write law.
They
So they
know,
watched law TV shows
right.
to
Eh,
put into She-Hulk. And it's like, but law TV shows aren't the law. The
No.
TV shows.
They should talk to that law guy who does
Yeah,
YouTube shows,
these guys, they all need to have
a real lawyer.
advisors,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
that's what I like. I watched a
Yeah,
show
like a
that's
consultant.
also made by Dick Wolf. I look on the show for FBI, and they have an FBI consultant on every episode. So there's a
Mhm.
guy there telling them, no, that would be wrong. You're not going to have a bomb in that place, or you're
Right.
not going to have this or that, or
Like
whatever.
when Kubrick had Arlie Emery on there as his military advisor, not only was his military advisor, but he was there in Vietnam at that period that was the movie was being shot. So he was very specific about the military stuff at that time period and in that place. So,
He ended up getting
you
the
know,
role because of that.
yeah,
Because,
it was great.
yeah.
But that's what you
Yeah.
need. You need an advisor, and not only an advisor, but somebody who really lived that experience and knows all the rules and all the laws and ins and outs.
I
Yeah,
love.
my oh
Oh,
god.
go ahead.
I was gonna say my grandfather was a cop after World War II. He was at Pearl Harbor, by the way, and he became an LA cop. And so when he retired and he got older, 60s, 70s, that type of thing. Now this is old school. So he said that the most realistic cop show on TV was Barney Miller, and that was a comedy.
Funny.
Yeah.
So yeah, he watched it every single night that it was on, anytime he could, because he goes, that's what it was like. And it was a
Right.
comedy.
It was a
That's
comedy.
funny.
I mean, Paul likes was it Homicide: Life on the Streets, saying that's
Yeah.
very realistic of what it was like being a cop, and especially because it's not they don't show you all the cases they win. A lot of times they lose the case in real life, and in some TV shows should do that. Now, Law and Order SVU has been having episodes where they lose the case. Somebody either like escapes and are never seen again, or they, whatever. They try to make it, but most of the time, yeah. Most of the time, in the show FBI, I've seen every single, and I've only watched 18 episodes of the first season. Every single episode they win, because they're not going to show you the one they don't want to show you the
Top
ones they
fantasy.
lose. Well, they don't want it's not that. It's like I would imagine they don't want to show you the ones where they lose because like then what happens? Nothing. Then it ends.
Because
You
it's
know?
not the thing is, and that's what I love about shows like The Wire and Homicide. It has nothing to do about the cases. The cases are incidental. It's about the characters, and the idea is that these characters are cops, but they have to go through the shit that the cops go through, and they end up getting changed by it. They want to go in there and win everything, but the reality is they don't, and that and all the pressure and all the other shit is what ends up changing these guys, sometimes for the good but mostly for the bad, and that's what you end up watching. You get hooked on these characters and seeing their development.
And how can you like X-Files? That's a case by case episode. It's a
But it's a
procedural.
mix. It's a mix. They have enough lightning or show in a bottle shows to balance that. You know what I mean?
I guess, but really, it's a case like it's a monster of the week, as they're called, or whatever. There's a alien of the week, or
Well,
whatever.
and
And
yeah, but at the same time, you have the other ones that are the more overarching storylines. There's like 8 or 9 of them that keep going on that stretch out through various seasons, and yeah, so a lot of times the monster of the week ones are actually so well done that you don't really mind it so much. It's just that you're paying attention to see the development of these ones that are overarching altogether. In fact, even later on, some of them never really ever get resolved at all. Even with after the final movies were done. So you know,
I like X-Files. I'm a big X-Files fan.
yeah, I'm a huge X-Files fan, and I
well, I'm
like
just
that because there's always something else that don't get explained that you want to see explained story wise.
well, I mean, and see, the reason I brought that up is just because you sounded like you don't like procedurals, which is a specific thing of like, case of the week, thing where each
Yeah,
each week
that's
it's all solved in one
that's
episode because
traditionally the way it's done for Hollywood. That's Dragnet and Perry Mason and
Supernatural
all
does
that
that,
stuff.
Well, in some
They're
cases of
done,
X-Files, it was resolved in one episode.
Yeah.
That's
but
that
yeah,
that's
but it
like
was a
Star Trek: The
mix.
Next Generation and stuff. Was you could watch one episode, and you could go, "Oh my God, this episode's great! You got to watch it," and it resolves itself within the hour. But then
Yeah,
there's other ones, kind of like how Paul was saying, where it was, like Picard becoming the Borg. That went over a few seasons with him dealing with, And that goes back to the character of being a Borg
Yeah.
and the
And
trauma and
I
everything.
kind of
So
wish they had done a little bit more of that with Next Generation. The problem was with Paramount at the time, there was writer issues there. They had so many different writers coming in. They would write for that specific show, and that was their episode, and that was it. And they weren't used again. So there was no ongoing familiarity or knowledge about these characters. They just came in for that one thing, and that was it. They needed a bigger, more diverse, and more permanent writing room. And it would have been a lot less, in my opinion, the show of the week, and more development of some of these other stories would have happened. And that's definitely my preference. I do like a mix, though. I do like a nice mix.
All right.
but today,
Anyway,
I don't think that you could even say that with an episode for most shows today. Like I wouldn't be able to say for a lot of these, oh, you need to watch this episode. It's great. Because now everything is that running storyline.
Mm-hmm.
And if you haven't
yeah.
seen episode 1, you're not going to understand episode 10.
Like Game of Thrones, you can't just
Yeah,
watch
and you
one
can't go into
episode.
season 3, no, because you'll be, and with Jonathan, with stuff like FBI and all that, it could be that they can't lose.
Yeah, I
The
think
FBI told
because
them we
I
can't
think
lose.
Right.
that happened because of serialization, because of binging. Now everything, you can get a whole series or whole season in like that, which means you get to see the whole story all the way throughout, as opposed to having to have to wait. Back in the day, kids don't understand. You didn't just get everything at once. You had to sit there and wait. Not only did you have to wait until the end of the season, you'd have to wait until the next year before you got to see it continue.
Well, no, but it still happens. You don't watch cable anymore. So,
No,
and because there's nothing on cable you want to watch. But
no.
like FBI or Law and Order or whatever, those still are week by week, and drive me crazy because sometimes they have like maybe a whole month where they take a break and you have to wait that whole month, which feels like forever, considering like just because we're in that binge watching like mode these days of like, I
Yeah,
want to watch it. I want to see.
it's a different mindset today because you could still. I don't even have to like right now, like you said, I'm watching Ballers. I don't have to watch it. I could go back next year and still catch all the episodes I didn't watch.
Yeah.
But with like Paul and I, with if it was Star Trek or whatever, if you missed that one episode, you would have to wait like 6 months to a year until they repeated the episode because they were shooting the next season. And then if you
Mhm.
missed it again, then you were screwed because then you
Right.
had to wait for some channel that would play it every single day to finally see that one episode.
Right.
But
And
now,
then
if you miss it, you could just go back and watch it next
Yep.
week.
and I can't tell you how different the world was back, say, when the first Next Generation was coming out, because if you missed an episode, you had to wait and hope that you caught a repeat somewhere along the line. The idea that you could go out and buy them on DVD or Blu-ray, that didn't exist yet. I mean, if you were lucky, you might have gotten something on VHS, but most of the time those TV ones were not on VHS. It was usually movies. The TV stuff didn't come out until later, you know?
Right. I mean, just think about like how TV started as you only had like three channels, right?
Yeah.
Originally. And there was no reruns. I remember I laughed my butt off at that scene in Back to the Future where he's in the 50s and he's talking and goes, "Oh, this is the episode where blah blah blah." He goes, "How did
There's
you
I
know
Love
that was
Lucy.
going to
Yeah.
happen?" And he
Yeah.
goes, "Oh, I watched it." He was like, "It's a new episode." And he goes, "Oh, I watched it on a rerun." And the guy goes, "What's a rerun?" and
Yeah,
it just,
although by the 70s they did that, they did have that, and it was the summer. The
right,
summertime was when you did the reruns, you know.
right. And that makes sense because the fall slash spring is when the TV shows would come out.
Hmm.
Summer, they had nothing else to put out, so they put out
Nothing.
the reruns for people who need to catch up or who never got a chance to see
And
it.
that's the way everybody thought how things were supposed to be, until Jaws ruined everything and said, "Oh, summertime is the time when everybody needs to go and see a movie or watch TV show." And now everything is directed towards the summer, and everything is
Well,
put
the
out in the
movies are
summer.
directed out in the summer. TV is still not made for the summers. TV still has repeats and other stuff because that's all they can put on the, to wait or whatever. Though interestingly enough, to go back to FBI because I've been watching that. FBI had was it their they had a spinoff, FBI Most Wanted, right? So they have two other spinoffs. And FBI Most Wanted came out in January of a time. So FBI was out already, had the first season. The second season started. Then that January of that second season, that show came out all the way past the summer. Then they put out the second season of that, right? Because it caught on. So interestingly enough, a lot of shows they put out spin-offs or sometimes new shows in January to see if people are interested in that show. I think a lot of shows like I don't know if Freaks and Geeks were. I don't think Freaks and Geeks were, but some shows like that that get canceled. That's the time where they get canceled because they are sort of still sort of new to everything, and people are like, yeah, I don't want to. I like there's just not enough interest in that show or whatever. And it's a different world today. It is absolutely a different world.
By the way, Wolfpack got canceled, so now the talk is that they may do a Buffy reboot after all, but with the same characters and with Sarah Michelle Gellar coming back.
But minus Joss Whedon?
To be determined. I mean, he'd have to give his okay with it. But the thing is I think if because Amber Benson is the one who kind of spearheaded the whole podcast version of that.
Yeah, the Audible.
Yeah, and I think if she and Sarah Michelle and some of the other folks who had been in it before, I think he'd probably go ahead and give his blessings for that. I think if it was complete strangers, he'd be not interested in relinquishing it.
Yeah.
But it depends. I personally would like to see him back because he still knows that universe better than anybody else, but I don't know that he's paid enough contrition yet.
Yeah, I mean, time hasn't. The thing about Hollywood likes a comeback and likes and normally people have to sort of apologize or at least show that they're changing in some way. And I don't see anything. Yeah, a lot of Joss's problem is his ego. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I mean, he, I just remember hearing that he threw James Marsters up against the wall and told him, "You're never gonna be a big character in my show," and walked away or whatever. And after hearing that kind of stuff, I'm like, I don't even know if I like him anymore. Like Joss Whedon, he's just not. You know.
I don't know. I guess for me, it's easier to separate the artist from the person.
Well, there you go. Then you should separate Troy Duffy from this movie.
And I kind of do. That's why, him being an asshole doesn't affect me as far as how I like this film. I mean, I had heard all about that previously, but if he's an asshole but produces a good movie, that's fine. I mean, sometimes Stanley Kubrick was an asshole. He's still my favorite director because he still makes the best movies ever made.
Yeah. I mean,
Kurosawa sometimes acted like an asshole. I mean, it happens.
I acted like an asshole, but I don't.
You are an asshole.
I am an asshole, and I don't know if I don't make that great movies, but I'm a major asshole because I'm Spaceballs. All right, so I guess that's about it.
It's an hour and a half long.
Yeah, we're
asshole.
pretty much wrapped up. Was there anything else like any last words like, John, you don't like this movie, so I don't know if you're ever gonna watch it again or not, but
probably not. I don't know.
Probably not. Paul, I'm glad you kind of liked it, enjoyed, for the most part it or whatever. Is this a movie that you'd watch again?
I'd watch it again as long as it was something along the lines of I was introducing it to somebody who had never seen it before or who I think might enjoy it, especially from a more technical point of view, because that's where I'm really more interested, or especially if they happen to be big Willem Dafoe fans or Norman Reedus fans, something like that. I do not own it, and I don't know that I'll ever own it because I don't love it in the same way that, because there are people who absolutely love this movie. And
Oh,
again,
they're fans, and they
yeah, and
all
then
talk to Troy and tell
I've
him how
already
much.
underlined the parts that I don't really care for, which is most of the story parts of it. So
Most of the
Uh,
story.
I would say that if part three did come out, I might watch one and two.
Okay.
Because then it's like,
that's
okay,
fair. That's
it's
fair. I do that too.
then I might watch, yeah. Because if it's a single movie, it's like, but if they
I've
make a
heard two
sequel, then
stank.
it's
Two was not nearly as good. No, I was kind of disappointed by two. There was no Willem Dafoe in it. There was no big name, except Billy Connolly, the guy who played the
But Julie
father.
Benz was in it, I hear.
Oh, well, go back to the Buffy thing. I guess that works.
Yeah.
But
I love me some Julie Benz.
I don't know. It was, yeah, that's right. She was in it. She was the new Willem Dafoe. Okay,
Ah,
yeah, she was what we were just thinking about. I just didn't even think about that. She was the girl. She was the
nice.
yeah. So, but I think it took place in Ireland, or something. They went back to Ireland with their father and saw that there's should they, and so it became the same movie, but it lost it. As much as I think it was a great idea for them to kill off Rocco, Rocco kind of,
spoilers.
I mean, didn't we do a
Are you
lot of
saying he
spoilers
comes
already?
back?
Yeah, he comes back,
Oh
but
my
as like
goodness.
a guiding kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi kind
Oh,
of,
like an angel?
yeah, kind of spirit kind of thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
It
that
like a
makes
becomes
more
kind of
Force
sense.
ghost.
campy and silly. And I think that might be something you're interested in because you might actually like it. Because I bet the people who told you it stank were the people who loved the original Boondock Saints. And you don't like Boondock Saints because you don't find it comical or whatever. I think they go a little bit more comical. Like they realize this is more like a cartoon and stuff. And but it's been a while since I've seen the second one. I remember watching it going, I just don't feel this. It feels like the
Mhm.
same movie except just not as much as I don't know,
Well,
as
I
entertaining.
did hear that they've been working on a three for
Yep.
a while now.
Actually, well, yeah, I don't know if it's in production or in pre-production. I think it's in pre-production, if I'm correct.
But I think Norman Reedus is involved. And I think even Willem Dafoe's
I
involved.
think only Sean Patrick Flannery was listed. That I read.
Well,
Uh,
plus Norman Reedus has his own Walking Dead show.
yeah. So right now it's in pre-production, and Sean Patrick Flannery is the only one listed in the cast.
Hmm.
So it hasn't even they haven't made it yet. I don't know. I'm always wondering about that. Like, because for us, making a movie can take forever because we don't have the clout that Boondock Saints has. But then again, a lot of the issues are, and Troy Duffy talks about this in the interview that he had. A lot of people can just Google him, find out the story of Overnight, and be like, "Nah, I don't want him at all. Like, I don't want to work with him." You know?
Well, yeah, I mean, once you're blacklisted, you're kind of blacklisted. I mean, look what happened to Rodney, Dangerfield with Caddyshack 2. I mean, the guy pretty much never worked again. I mean, he did Ladybugs and a couple, stuff like that, but he pretty much never worked again. So if you're going to get blacklisted, that's pretty much,
Or
pretty much it. And who
Jeffrey
knows, maybe
Jones. Jeffrey Jones was blacklisted.
yeah, that
You
makes me
know?
sad. I think you told me what happened, and that makes me sad because I like him. But it's I don't know, maybe Troy Duffy is the next Stanley Kubrick. He'll just make a new Boondock Saints movie every 10 years.
Well, maybe. I would love to see him make another one, another 10 years,
By the way,
and
Stanley
but
Kubrick worked with Tom Cruise.
yes, they did. So, I know Paul doesn't. I don't know if even Paul's seen that movie or not, but
Paul, have you
Eyes
seen
Wide
Eyes
Shut.
Wide Shut?
Yeah.
Did
Did
you
you
like
like
it?
it?
Yes, overall, even though I think it's not a very good Kubrick movie.
It's
Um,
not his best, no.
no, but there are aspects of it, and I think part of it is because I don't really like Tom Cruise, and that's my main problem with it. You know,
Yeah, that's his lover right there. That's
Yeah, I would
John's.
kill for Tom Cruise.
Yes. He would kill for Tom Cruise and Nick Cage. If they can both be in a movie together, I would see. did you hear? Tom Cruise is rumored to be in Tarantino's next movie, The Movie Critic.
Interesting.
I think it's gonna be his last movie, so I was like, he should cast freaking Tom Cruise, Nick Cage, everybody John Ward loves, and then this would be like the ultimate John Ward movie, like Tarantino directing, like
I
because
would just be, I wouldn't go to work. I would just be masturbating all day.
yeah, Brad Pitt is coming back for it, to work with him again. So it should be an interesting, thing. I think it's gonna be the movie that gets like all the attention at that time, or
Now, if they
whatever.
would all come and work for Neil Breen and shoot it out in Las Vegas, that
Oh,
would be
sweet
awesome.
Jesus.
Yes. Well, John would have to get on that set if Tom Cruise was
I'd
I
in.
fly
should
out to
message him.
Vegas. I'd fly out to Vegas for that.
Yeah. You would be okay with Tom Cruise working with Neil Breen?
How
All right.
fascinating would that be?
I would have to disagree with that one, but to let Paul know, in July, I'm hoping this still happens. I am interviewing for one filmmaker, Yui Boll.
Oh, okay. Interesting. What
Yeah,
is he doing now?
he's still directing. If you look him up, he's got 3 films in production right now, like
Huh.
pre-production, like in
People are still
production,
giving him money?
post-production. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
I love his stuff. I think his stuff is. I absolutely love him as a filmmaker. So,
He's so terrible.
God, I think he's so good. I love his stuff.
Oh
And
my
I'm not even
goodness.
saying that in a bad way. I'm just like I actually legitimately like his movies.
Ugh.
Um,
So
so that's really funny because like, we have John on the show. We cannot if we review a Uwe Boll film. I don't know if it's fair to have John on there because he's just no matter what he's going to be, jerking Uwe Boll's dick off. So I don't know
I mean,
if
it's not everybody makes gold. So sometimes it's plastic, but or paper. But I mean,
Or
so I
shit.
can be. I think that's a true fan can say for anything, music, movies, whatever it is, will know if something's not good. And if you
Yeah.
are like a real fan and appreciate that person, you can honestly say, yeah, that wasn't their best CD or that wasn't their best album. It's the people that just praise, 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 and praise that
like no
it,
matter if it is shit, they praise because
Mr.
yeah.
Ferguson.
well, yeah, here's the oh yeah, and I don't know why anybody does that, but here's the thing. When it comes to because there are people on YouTube, and this was discussed on somebody else's Facebook page, but when there are some YouTubers out there that will praise like Marvel, no matter what Marvel does,
But
they're
that's
gonna
because
say
they
because they're
want the
getting paid.
access.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're
they're
getting
getting
paid
money, they're
in
getting
some way.
access, they're
Yeah.
getting interviews, they're getting free tickets to Disneyland or Disney World. They have to. There's a guy that I watch on YouTube. It's just simply called Grizzly. I think I've sent you one or two of his videos where he'll show you all of these shills. And you could see where they slightly go into a negative and then they turn it because they're like, oh fuck, I can't say anything bad. Red Letter Media has the Nerd Crew, which makes fun of all of them, and they're
Red Letter
used in
Media does
some of
not
the.
give a fuck.
No, they don't, and it's
Awesome.
yeah, that's why. So it's if you could criticize, and Ferguson was, Paul brought him up. I've liked some of his movies, but 99% of his films are garbage. I can actually like 1% maybe. I can find something I like, but I have to dig, to find
You
it.
have to work at it.
Yeah.
Um,
So
and it's funny because we've been doing Indie Film Cafe, and this is our seventh season. And when it's so hard. We don't get a lot of 30s unless it's a really bad. Like there's no justification for whatever. But if you can find like a glimmer of something, generally it gets a 9.5,
Mhm.
or something. Because it's and we do that as our stuff because we're fair. We're honest. If we can find something good to say about something, sometimes even if I can find something good, if it's really that bad, like I mean, I love you, Donald Farmer, but the Shark Exorcist was terrible. I'm still looking forward to Shark Exorcist
I
2.
mean,
That
even
I'm,
in that
you
case,
know,
we rarely ever say to never go and watch this.
oh, we know we always say, well,
We
no, we could,
always there are a
no,
few,
there's a few
but most of
we've
the time
mentioned.
we will say go watch it for yourself, make your own judgment. Here is we always put up where you can go and buy it so that people can go and buy and pay the artist and make their own determinations. But this is how we see it, and these are the reasons. That's the show.
Hmm. So no, it, it's one of those things where I'm very happy, uh, to have this, to have the platform and to be able to express how I feel about the movies and stuff. And I feel like we as movie watchers who've watched enough of these movies can tell you how we feel
Mhm.
about it or whatever
And
without, you
I'm
know.
glad that I'm not in the position that a lot of you folks are, in that I don't have to worry about possibly offending somebody that I might work with or might
Well,
want to work with or
it's
might,
okay. You can offend
you
Harvey Weinstein now. He's
I'm
fine.
free to offend everybody, and I
Yeah.
typically do. So
I still say they all knew. They all knew. And then Tarantino and Smith and all of them are just lying. They all
Uh,
knew. Everybody
well,
knew.
at
Matt
least with
Damon, Ben Affleck, they all knew.
with
Come
Smith,
on.
at least he gave, what is it, the money to
And that's filmmakers' guilt.
right, but maybe
So
that's
he
fair.
knew.
So good. Then but he
No,
still,
because he should have said something.
oh what,
But
but then
but he
he
couldn't,
would have
because then he
gotten
wouldn't have made
blacklisted.
right. But that doesn't make it right.
It doesn't make it
yeah,
right. I mean, and that's the funny thing about this movie. That's what it says in this movie, the indifference of good men,
yeah. I'm
right? Sitting
thinking
back and
of
watching.
the poor chick from I loved her. She's in Mallrats.
No, I found out information about her. She Mallrats was Gramercy Pictures and nothing to do with
mm,
Miramax. She
no, no,
never
but I'm
worked.
talking about the actress, the
Yeah,
lead.
Claire Forlani.
Yeah,
She
but Claire
was
Forlani had apparently was approached by Weinstein, and that's one of the reasons why
no.
she was
I looked.
banished.
I talked to Vincent Pereira. That's all fake. That's not true.
Yeah,
No, none of that happened. She just chose to go down a different path instead of being the movie star. She's still doing stuff. She's still acting. You're just not watching any of the movies that she's in. I looked at her career and she's huge career. You're just not watching anything of hers, because it's got an actor you don't like and you're not going to watch it.
I
But
didn't know. I mean, other than Meet Joe Black, that was like the last thing I remember her
no,
being.
she's been in a lot of stuff and TV. She's doing
Oh no, I
really
did
love her
see
stuff.
something with her. I don't know when it was made, but she had some major plastic surgery done. And I'm like, what is
Really?
that who I think it is? It's just like, oh my God, you look like a monster.
That's she. She's like the last person who did that.
She had a TV show called Domina. That's out. It's on MGM Plus, so that's why you haven't watched it. She was in a Black Beauty TV show. She's been in Hawaii Five-O, the remake,
I've
show.
never seen that.
Precious Cargo, which is a indie movie of Bruce Willis, but back when Bruce Willis was doing those movies for his health, because he,
Direct to video stuff.
direct to video stuff. Camelot. She was on a show called Camelot. That only lasted, I guess, one season. Um, she's been in a few stuff, so she's been doing stuff since Meet Joe Black. You
Mystery
just
Men. That was the other thing I remember her in.
Yeah, and then after that, she's still been doing a lot of stuff. So she's been working. She's not on stuff that you've seen. So, it's not like none of that stuff
Oh
is from.
God, that's right. She's in a Yui Bowl movie.
Which
Uh,
one?
Name of the King, a Dungeon Siege tale. I forgot
Nice.
about that.
There's
she,
3 of those.
I think that was the
Yeah,
third one.
with Jason Statham, Lily Sabinsky, and John Rhys Davis.
So that's, I think this Jason Statham is the first one. Because then
Yeah,
Dolph Lundgren, I think, is in the second one. I don't know who's in the third one.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it's got Jason Statham, Rob
I
Perlman, Ray
have his
Liotta.
collection of films right there, right there. Just stacked.
Oh,
sweet.
holy shit! It's got Christiana Loken and Matthew Lillard in it too.
Yeah.
Will Sanderson. I mean,
He
good
works with
God.
a lot of the same people. I mean, a lot of the Michael Pare is in like a
Have
ton
you
of his
seen
movies.
that movie, Moody?
Which one? In the Name of the King? Not
Yeah.
yet. Not yet.
Oh, we got to do it for Indie Film Cafe.
Well,
Watch
Well, we got to
Reynolds
bring
is
Raging
even in
John
it.
Bull.
on, and
Watch
John's got to be
Raging Bull.
honest.
I'm telling you, that's the film that he's trying to sell in Raging Bull. The boxing part in the documentary is very small, but it's basically from his childhood all the way up to present day, and him trying to sell that film in the Name of the King.
But
And,
Ray,
and he's
Ray
not
Liotta's
succeeding.
in there. Burt Reynolds is in there. It's just like so weird.
It's because I asked a friend of mine before I was like a big fan of his, and I'm just like, why are all these people in his movies? And they're like, he's like, one, they probably get paid well. Two, they get to go to a different country. And three, they're probably put up really well. You know, they're not going to get some shit hotel. They're going to put them up at some nice, like, you know, place,
Which will
and
cost
he
them a
probably
lot
treats
because it's
them
in
really
another
well.
country. You
Ron
know, so.
Perlman's in there. I love Ron Perlman. It's like, oh God, why?
All right, we got to do that for Indie Film Cafe,
Yeah,
and John has to come on,
that's
and
right.
John has to give us his honest opinion. If it's crap, John, you can't be like, well, I like Uwe Boll, so
I
I'm gonna
don't
give it.
look, man. I say Tom Cruise is The Mummy. I really enjoy it, but is it a good movie? Not really. So it's, but I still like it. I mean, because it's Tom Cruise.
But
So I mean,
when
That's
I
we
can
do
okay.
like
that,
the name
That's
of the
okay.
King,
that's
even though it's a
okay.
bad movie. You
Yeah.
know,
But when we do the stinkometer, and I've gotten in trouble for doing this too, is when I like something, sometimes I give it a lower score just because I liked it. But it's still a bad movie. If it's still a bad movie, it's got to get a higher stink score.
Yeah.
You know, whether or not it's a movie I enjoy, even though it's stinky. You know,
I will
so
try.
Especially
Excuse
some
me.
of the stinkiest movies we've ever done are some of the ones we have the most fun watching.
I mean,
well,
if you want to get one that's really bad with him, that's considered his worst, more than House of the Dead, would be Alone in the Dark.
yeah, with Christian Slater,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've heard.
there's two cuts of those. There's the theatrical and the
Really?
directors.
We'll
Yeah,
eventually get there, but I want to do
and
the
I
Name of the King
love
because
House
that's
of the
got
Dead.
He is on my list. It's just my list is so long. We haven't just gotten to him yet.
All right. So anyway, to go back to Film Freaks, which is the show that we're watching that we're
What
doing
were we
here.
reviewing? I'm
You
sorry,
were
what?
reviewing Boondock Saints.
Boondock
Anyway,
Cows.
Oh, Boondock Cow Moose.
Yeah, that's right.
Boondock Moose.
Moose.
The many Boondock Saints of New Jersey.
Anyway, I just want to say thank you guys so much for checking this out. We had decided to do this through here through Zoom because we tried to do stuff through I think we tried to do something last week and it just didn't work out. So we're like, let's just do it here this week through Zoom.
Great idea for Madeline Deering. If she's listening to us, you have to do a Boondock Sharks film, a mashup. She would love to do that.
I'm sure. I'm sure
Two
she
sharks
got
walking around with guns.
Yes. And they could each have the tattoos on their fins.
That say like Ahab, and then you know, Quint.
and the rosary around their body, you know, or whatever.
I'm trying to get him to do an evil clam movie, and she's like, evil clams.
Oh Lord.
See, Paul, you're an idea guy. You are an idea
if I could
guy.
only get them to work, that's it.
Yeah, they only get them to come to life, you know.
Use
Anyway.
my powers for good.
Well, everybody, thank you guys for joining us. Join us next month where it'll be Paul's pick. I have no idea what he's picking. It'll be something he
In the
loves.
name of the king. In the name of the king.
No, he's something he loves for Film Freaks. That would be Indie Film Cafe.
That's Indie Film Cafe.
Yes.
I get confused on how you guys do these things.
Sorry.
Yes. And
I'm still confused about Area 51 on where that goes. So I keep thinking that's horror film lovers, but it's with you and I still get confused of where all your stuff goes.
Yeah, it goes in different places. So anyway, thank you guys for checking this out. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Join us next month for a brand new episode. Until then, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.